This conference
my
will
You
now
should put
be
that in your
recorded.
signature block.
my email signature.
You're an SME.
SME. All right. So here we are in the applied PO info screen, and this is a very common screen for Kay and other buyers to always hang out in. And I'm going to set up a couple of queries and show you how to do that. And then if we need to get together later today or tomorrow and set these up for you individually, we can do that as well. But I'm going to go into query, and then I'm going to select show me the secondary query button here. And I want to see query requisitions with a status of approved. And so then I'm going to save my query. And I do these backwards. I mean, I guess let's go ahead. We can do this. Query number 1, approved. And so what I'm doing is I'm saving this as a query option in this particular screen. Where we're going to use it now is if we come up to this little caret to the right of query, click on that, it's going to say approved, and it's going to scan the system for any requisitions that have been approved but have not been converted into a PO.
So again, we're in the purchase requisition module, not in the purchase order module.
Right.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And we can see that from our breadcrumbs, procurement planning, purchase requisitions, and apply PO info.
Now, we're going to get an email that there are requisitions that have been approved, which would trigger us going in
Correct.
looking for them.
That's right.
Yes, I would like to see that, Rob.
Yeah, definitely with a hyperlink that just takes us right to them.
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, hyperlink. Okay, very good. So let's go ahead and we're going to either I can walk you through or I can have our SME walk us through, but really up to you guys on this training. But we can go. Let me go through rec number 1 as in a kind of best practice, and then we'll have Kate walk us through one as well. How's that?
Sure.
Perfect.
Okay. So I again, some of these screens I prefer table view versus form view, and then this is one of those where I header and form and the requisition lines in table for myself. If you like a particular view, again, I know we may have covered it earlier, David might have covered it, you go to the preferences here, and you go to the save layout. It's kind of small right there, but it allows you to save your personal configuration, so you can move columns, everything else you want around. You hit save, and every time you open the screen, it will open up in this format, if you will.
Okay.
And no, there's no way, unfortunately, not yet. I know they're working on it right now at Cost Point to predefine user configurations to remove elements of the screen that people don't need on a company-wide basis. So
that's exactly what I was going to ask you, because I asked Craig about that. Yes.
Yes. And so I'm hoping that we get on that early adopter, and maybe we can sign up some folks. Early adopters on that kind of scenario, but we're definitely looking into that. So, all right. So at this point, we're looking at the information. They may or may not have assigned a buyer, but we're going to go ahead and assign a buyer here. And so I'm going to go ahead. And unfortunately, there is not a way for someone to come in and prevent assigning somebody else as a buyer. In the managed PO screen, we can control by access rights who can and who can't actually execute buying on that screen. So we can lock that down for you if you need to.
Right. Yeah, we'd like that. I mean, it's I think for people that have the ability to create POs, then it should be the three of us, Chuck, Kay, myself, and then I would add Craig and probably Ginger. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, it looks like somebody has. And so under the buyers in test, we have our lovely crew of buyers, a wrecking crew.
That's for sure. Oh, there's 5 right there. So there you go.
Yeah, someone already set us up.
Good. Yep. All right. That's good. Perfect.
Yep. And so I've added Kay as a buyer. And so now anything new we need to add to the lines, requisition lines, or the detail, we can either right click in some empty space here and then go on and says load buyer. And then we see our green, very subtle check mark show up here. That means I've copied my buyer ID to my individual lines.
Got it.
And so that brings that information there together. Next step is really fairly simple. I come into this assign PO, a subtask right here in the middle. I click on auto load, and if my vendor and my information is ready to go, I'm going to click on assign POs and then assign PO IDs, and it's going to grab the next one that's in the system and kick out purchase order number 2.
Beautiful.
Now this is the one where I typically come in here and I move this over to the far left because it's just easier for me to see. So I'm going to come in and.
Right.
Quick question. When you
Sure.
want to use those columns, do you have to move them each time you go in? Or is there a way to lock them permanently so that it's always there? Like, yeah, it's defaulted to that every single time.
Yeah, so you come back up here to the shadow and hit save, and it will save that layout on that particular screen.
I see. Thanks.
I like it.
Yep.
Good.
And if you've hidden stuff, it'll automatically hide stuff, and whatever you have saved here will stay part of that. So, so we've assigned our buyer. We've hit auto load on our purchase order. We actually need to. I'm not sure why this is the old one where we actually didn't assign the vendor. So, this is why.
Should have been rejected by, in the PR, when they were creating the PR then. It should have been rejected if a vendor wasn't assigned.
Well, I think as the purchaser, we've set up that I have the final say on the rec, right? So like I go in and approve or reject the rec too before I put it into a PO.
Yeah, we've set you up with that right. So if you've come in and we see this information and it's not right,
Right, I would reject it.
She can come in here and then under the header approvals, and this is something we not everybody does in the setup, but we can actually you can come in and hit new.
Yes.
And we're going to go ahead and add sequence 2 as the buyer.
Now I get that this was just a test, but like in the real, like in the configuration side.
And the reason for that, Raph, is that what we talked about in the earlier session. So all of those things that we are going to require each purchase requester to identify in the notes section, if they haven't done it or if they haven't done it adequately, we're going to reject the purchase requisition.
Correct.
So I have a question. So everything's approved. The rec goes into the queue. Kay goes in. She takes a look at it. She sees an issue. She rejects it. She puts some notes in there for the reason for the rejection. And does an email go back to the original requester, letting them know that your rec has been rejected for a reason. Go look at it and fix it.
Right.
Correct.
So
yes.
There is an email notification.
Good. Beautiful.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right. Perfect.
And so that's where we would add it. Sometimes we add an approval title called rec reject, and that's we assign certain folks who have that right. K and the buyers would have access to that rec reject screen, or you can add it here as the buyer. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that line though because we don't want to actually reject this rec in this process. So.
Right. Okay.
So we have our vendor, we have our purchase order number, and now we're going to go ahead and just hit save. Vendor address combination. Oh, sorry about that. Let me see my vendor address.
So, Raph, if everything goes properly and correctly, in theory, Kay's job and Chuck's and mine in terms of generating POs should be incredibly simple, right? I mean,
correct.
Because the bulk of the work is the establishment of the purchase requisition.
Right. Again, you guys just need to make sure that the vendor is in there, the right address is in there, the right dates.
Right.
And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to recopy the vendor information. So I'm going to load preferred vendor. I wish they would just put vendor. Preferred vendor has a different connotation to it in my book too. But vendor address, I'm going to put the payment address down here. And this will automatically default if we would have filled it out in the header and then copied it down. So this is my processing error for not doing POs on a day-to-day basis like your SME is going to be doing. So now I'm going to hit save and continue. And it's going to warn me my due date is already past due. That's okay. And the rate group cannot be changed. That's something we talked about earlier on the, gosh, this is way back when, this is original rec, so I'm not worried about these other errors. And now the requisition has been saved. The vendor's been associated, the buyer's been associated. We're ready to convert this into a purchase order. So I highlighted the requisition ID and hit Control-C to copy. I'm now coming over to the last process, which is creating the purchase order. Not sure why they have this separate button here. I've asked several people at Deltek and not got a good answer on any of that, but you can come in here and select the requisition you're working on.
Okay.
Paste the requisition in there. Now, if your requisition isn't ready, it won't show up as an option in this screen.
Okay, good.
And now at this point, we're going to go ahead and just grind the gears. You can print if you like. If not, that's fine. We're going to go up to the action menu and say create purchase order.
Beautiful.
Now you can either do this by buyer code, or I want to run everything for this particular vendor. As you can see there, you have a couple options. And now if we see the screen, we see rec PO line number is 1, and I remember that my rec has only 1 line on it, so I feel pretty confident that we've now converted this over as a PO. So I'm going to go back to my number 2 up here and go to that apply PO screen, and I'm going to refresh this. And we can see that since my query was for approved requisitions, it's now gone. And if we just go ahead and reset a query and pull up all of our requisitions, we will see that requisition 1 is now status of PO generated. So it's fairly quick. Once everybody has done their stuff, from applying the requisition, the cost, that data, again, the buyers are just verifying that the data is there, adding the vendor, making sure the vendor payment address is correct, their buyer code is associated with it, and then just grinding the gears on that create PO page and going forward. So now we can actually go into that PO number and take a look at it in the purchase order screen.
Okay.
You had a question there while the system is pulling up? There?
Yeah, what I was going to ask, and I know it's one of the topics that was in your bulletized list, but it's the issue of terms and conditions for POs. And there will generally be 2 different ways of doing it. So for what you're doing here, where we're making a material purchase, it will be the terms and conditions that you've loaded for us into your system, we want the ability to modify those, and actually we do have a change to them now. So we need to know how to, A, modify those terms and conditions, and B, not necessarily have the purchase order automatically attach them, but have the ability to say, yes, attach these, or separately, we want to have it for our major subcontracts. We're not going to attach all those terms and conditions because it's like 40 pages.
Right.
We just want to put a note in here that says something like this purchase or terms and conditions under subcontract number XYZ apply to this purchase order. So those are the 2 different scenarios with terms and conditions.
Okay. Well, we can go ahead and start to do that right now. I mean, it's fairly quick to do. Let's go ahead and I'm going to copy something on my other screen here real quick. And let's walk through setting up a new clause. How's that?
Beautiful.
Because that's really what that converting of a purchase rec to a PO, fairly standard thing, not too complicated. So I'm going to close any extra screens that I don't need. So I'm going to come in here and close stuff up. And so now I'm going to come in and type in my text. All right. So we have a couple of different versions of text here. we have our PDM, which is product data management text, and PJM, which is project managed text. The initial loading of the library happens here in the PDM text. So here's where the organization needs to make a conscious decision on how they're going to name the nomenclature of the standard text clause. Some people will come in here and put that in here as the Buy American. And I did, let me see if you're able to, is the screen playing? I don't know if I paused the screen. Let me go ahead and put that back. So let's go back and we'll review this. So let's go ahead and I'm going to type in the word text. As you can see here, again, the project management text and PDM and the data text. And this is where we're going to go to load the text information. So as you can tell, we can add different revisions to the text, and we'll have to revise your main standard terms and conditions and stuff. So this is where we're going to load our clause. So this one happens to be directly off the website for the 52225-1 Buy American Supplies. This is formatted this way, and it will print fairly close to this with the carriage returns on your purchase order. Once you have this here, we need to determine where we're going to use, bottom right-hand corner here of the screen, where we're going to use these terms and conditions, or these text clauses, if you will. So I want to say I want to manage this on all PO types. I want this to be available, I should say, on all PO types. And I want this to be available on all purchase requisition types as well. Do I want it to automatically default? You can say yes or no. And from what I just heard, we don't want no. And then sequence number, we can populate that there, or we can let it kind of populate based on what the users are going to pick. Any questions there so far?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that we don't want to populate in the purchase order all of the FARs and DFARs by text. I think what I would like to see is a simple statement that we put in every purchase order, whether it's materials or for major subcontracts, that says this purchase order, and I'm just thinking it, I'll write down exactly what I want, but something like this purchase order, it's in accordance with either A, MIKEL standard terms and conditions dated X, which would be for materials, or B, this purchase order is in accordance with MIKEL subcontract number XYZ.
Yep. And that's typically the way folks will handle that as well. This is just, you know, I put the FAR clause. Some people put BIAM. It really is up to you on how you want to handle that. The main thing is that we enable it to be possibly used on all PO types and any purchase requisition. So,
okay.
And then we just hit save. Once we hit save, we're good to go on that. Another one that folks typically will put on there is they call it a web TC, and that's just see our website for our terms and conditions. So that's one of the more simple ways of doing that in the process. So once we have this here, we can go ahead and add that to any one of their purchase recs or purchase orders. So if we pull up our PO that we just created, and here's where we have the option to either at the header, coming into the header text and saying that we want to make sure that we have new sequence 1 is defaulting that other terms and conditions. So now we want to put Buy American to follow your other one. So whatever you want to assign to this, we can go ahead and save. Maybe we want to delete the long 9-page terms and conditions here, so we're going to delete that.
Yeah.
Hit save. We're good to go. Now let's go ahead and copy this here, and let's go ahead and do a print purchase order preview. So see if it changed on our terms and condition wise. So we're going to put in our purchase order. So we're going to only choose one. And a very tricky key, we're going to actually click this print previously printed PO. So if it was previously printed, it will still be able to come up here in our preview. So now we can see now you can put it at the top, you can put it at the bottom. I mean, it's really up to you. And you mentioned that you wanted to have the prime contract not show up here on the purchase orders as well?
That was for vendors. So the prime contract, the charge number, that's all internal. If this was a purchase order we were sending to a vendor to buy a part, those numbers would have no significance to them.
Yeah,
so I don't see the importance of having them
I mean,
included.
it could be in there. I mean, the only really relevant numbers that we will need will be, actually, you know what, as I think about it, it's probably not a bad idea to have the prime contract number in there. All of these material purchase orders, we probably should have it in there. So if we're buying something for Dave, well, for Dave, we're a subcontractor, so it would be the vendor. It would be our prime contract. But if we're buying stuff like for Dean, it would be the 7834/N402. I don't have a problem. Actually, I kind of like that because it ties everything together. And if an auditor ever comes in and looks at it and says, "Why did you buy that?" You can say, "Well, it's got this contract because it's tied." Let's leave it in there.
Okay.
I think we leave it in there. But what I think I want to do, going back to the terms and conditions, I think we will attach any terms and conditions that we want for the material purchase order. So we'll say, see attached in accordance with MIKEL standard or whatever. And then for the terms and conditions for the major subcontracts, we'll just say it's in accordance with the subcontract terms.
So you're going to pull the T's and C's out of this PO format?
Yeah, I don't think I want to have them in there because it makes the PO ridiculous. It's like 9 or 10 pages long.
All right, so let me go ahead and I will uncheck the default. And if you want to use it, it's there. And if not, don't worry about it.
Yeah, because we periodically change terms and conditions, and we can just attach them because we have to email the purchase order anyways. So we'll just attach it, but when we generate the purchase order, I want the purchase order to actually say this is submitted in accordance together. It's tied together. Yeah. So I'll come up with a wording on that, and then that wording becomes default wording depending on which choice we pick in the system here.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So now to kind of further walk this down the path there, I'm going to come back and we're going to go back to our text here, and we're going to go to our PJM or our project specific text. So here's where we get a little tricky in that if we have a particular project that we're working on, I can't remember the one we were working on earlier. Let me pull up my notes real quick. So every time I would enter this purchase requisition, a purchase requisition or a purchase order with this particular project number and not the higher level project number, but actually .00.039, I can say to always include Buyer American clause because it's an actual contractual requirement that this is on there. And so kind of a fire and forget. Now that I've associated with this, every time I create a PO or a purchase rec with this project number, it will populate this text clause on those documents where we select it to be used.
Yep.
So it's kind of nice if there are things that are specific to only one contract and you want to maintain that. This is a nice way to do it, and it takes it sometimes out of the buyer. Kind of gives them a peace of mind to know that they're going to hit the right terms and every time because of the project number that's in here. You don't have to use it. It's just another option for that project specific information. if at the project header, and that's in the project screen within CostPoint, you put in your DO, DA, DX ratings in the system, those will print on the purchase order as well because we have those FAR clauses checkbox on printing on the PO. So if it's a DX rated program, that will then show that it is a rated program on the PO as well. So that will automatically carry over.
Yeah.
Great. All right. I mean, trying to go back and see, we were going to convert the purchase rec to PO, so I think we're going to hand it over to our SME, and we have one other requisition. If you guys want to do that and have her walk us through that, or do you feel comfortable so far with what we've covered?
Kind of good with it.
I feel comfortable as your subject matter expert.
Yeah. Look, it's going to take a while. We'll get used to it.
Yeah.
So, Raph, there were people that did not attend the PR training today. And I know we have tomorrow and Thursday open, and I'm thinking maybe we have Thursday as a makeup, because I know one person for sure that would like to take it today or tomorrow.
Sure.
So I will shoot you a note later today and let you know about that, but I'm thinking maybe Thursday. And then I shot you a note this morning on the other elements. As far as the engineering piece of that,
Sure.
that's probably Dave Lambert. That's kind of outside of us.